Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Welcome to the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 39. Buenas noches, damas y caballeros, chicos y chicas, niños de todas edades, y bienvenidos a el Karey Carbaugh podcast. My name is Karey Carbaugh, for those of you that don't know me, and this is the Karey Carbaugh podcast, episode number 39. Welcome and thanks for joining me this evening. I'm a couple minutes late. I thought I had plenty of time, and then as fate would have it, life took a turn in the last half hour. Have you ever come back from a vacation or a conference and just been filled with excitement and just kind of overwhelmed, and maybe had a fantastic time, maybe learned a lot if it was a conference, and then come home and the next day just been completely exhausted? Me too. That was me this last weekend. And then have you ever, after that exhaustion, had a day where things just don't go the way you plan? Me too. That was kind of what happened today. I had a fantastic weekend this last weekend, and that's what I'm going to share a bit of content from tonight. But when I got home yesterday, partly because I was in a different time zone, I had traveled from Colorado, which is mountain time, to Ohio, which is eastern time, so it's 2 hours later, and then came back, and my whole rhythm was just kind of off Monday night and then all day Tuesday. And I just kept thinking all day yesterday, I'm just flat tired. Physically, emotionally, I'm just drained. Have you ever felt that way? If so, let me know in the comments. And then today, although things were going pretty good, I thought I had plenty of time. I was going to do some prep for the podcast. Got home from work. Things were going pretty good. I turned my computer on and I got this message letting me know that I needed to upgrade to Windows 10 before it went out of support in a couple weeks in October, and I clicked the notify me later, remind me later button. And then my system was running kind of slow, which it sometimes does, especially when I start opening Facebook and some other apps along with my adaptive software, for those of you who know me and know that I'm visually impaired, and I use some software that enlarges and speaks the screen to me. That bogs down my system quite a bit. So the system was running slow, and I restarted it, and my system decided to upgrade to Windows 10 about 30 minutes before this podcast. And it was running and running and running and running and running and running, and I wasn't sure how long it was going to take. My phone, the selfie camera on my phone isn't currently working. I need to probably upgrade to a new iPhone. So I don't have that as an option, and I had to do something that I never do. I probably shouldn't confess this online because it'll be recorded now to be held against me, but I used my work computer for the podcast tonight. I never ever sign into Facebook from my work computer, but I was kind of running out of options, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to jump on here and be live and be present for you guys tonight. So here I am. Hopefully I won't get fired over it, but hey, here we are. You know, sometimes, whether you call it the devil, whether you call it fate, sometimes life just tries to take things away from you, and we are just not going to let that happen. I see some people joining me live. Thanks so much for joining me live. Let me know if you're joining me live or on the replay, and I'll try to respond to some comments toward the end here if we have time. or I will for sure jump on and respond to comments afterward like I normally do, since I'm using a little different system tonight than I generally do. But thanks so much for joining me live. Let me know if you're joining me live by dropping an L or the word live in the comments. Let me know if you can relate to anything that I've just shared or anything that I'm about to share by dropping an R or the word relate. Actually, the word relate, because R is for replay. If you're watching this on the replay, drop me an R or replay. If you can relate to any of this, if you've ever had a day like I just described, drop the word relate in the comments. That's always helpful. And let me know where you're dialing in from. It's always helpful for me to know where these podcasts are reaching. I've been reaching some friends in Mexico. I had a friend the last couple weeks from Zambia that signed in, so we're now in Zambia, we're in Mexico, we're in Europe. Kind of exciting, something I never dreamed of a year ago. Never thought I would even be doing one of these podcasts, but here we are. And as most of you know, if you've been following these podcasts, the whole point of these is to help people with issues of self-esteem. And one of the issues of self-esteem is communication. It always helps to have good communication to boost your self-esteem. And tonight we're going to talk about a topic that I've heard about a few times, but it really resonated with me this weekend. I'm just going to try and look and see who's calling in here. I see Courtney. Thanks for joining me, Courtney. I'm glad you're joining me live. And Tennille. Thanks, Tennille. You're always a great supporter. I appreciate you joining me live. And I know I'm missing a few here. I'm just trying to glance through, but I will read through these comments later. But I want to jump into our topic before I waste too much more time here, because I know your time is valuable. I wanted to share a bit of a topic that was covered in a personal development conference that I went to this last weekend. I've heard this before, but it kind of struck me in a new way, particularly in light of these podcasts. And so I wanted to share just a brief snippet. And you might have noticed from the comments, from the title rather, not the comments. I'm looking at comments here. You might have noticed from the title that tonight we're going to talk about whether you are a hunter or a gatherer. And most of us tend to have a bit of both, but traditionally males are thought to be hunters and females are thought to be gatherers. And that kind of stems back to our primal days, where men were the hunters. They went out and hunted for food, hunted for the meat to bring back home, where women stayed at home and kept the household in order, kept the children in line, made sure the house was clean, made sure the meals were ready, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's where this idea of hunter and gatherer came from. But we're going to dive into these a little bit, and I hope you'll see by the end that most of us have a bit of both in us. And at times we can be hunters, and at times we can be gatherers. But it helps to explain some things in communication. So let's dive in. What is this idea? Let's talk first about hunters. What is the idea of a hunter? Well, a hunter, if you think about someone who's out hunting for food or meat, if you have some thoughts, I know Tennille and Courtney have been through this, so makes me a little bit nervous. Hopefully I'm covering this accurately. A hunter is someone who's out hunting meat. Out hunting meat. And so the idea is they're very focused. Hunt the deer, kill the deer, kill the deer. And they're narrow-minded, narrow-focused. They've got one task in mind. Hunt that animal. Kill that animal. Bring that animal home. Whereas a gatherer is someone who's looking at everything. They're cleaning the house. They're gathering things together. They're maybe going out and picking and gathering berries, or they're gathering food. They're multitasking. They're relationship building. They're looking at all kinds of different aspects of life. They're keeping the children in line. They're keeping the house clean. They're keeping relationships focused. They're gathering information from lots of different sources, as opposed to the hunter who's very singly focused. And so if you think about someone, and again, traditionally it's male versus female, but I don't think that's as true anymore, particularly as females have entered the workforce. They've become more gatherers, or rather hunters. They've become more hunters in recent years. But this idea of hunting, if you think about someone who's watching a football game, whether it's a male or a female, it could be either one. They're watching a football game or they're watching a movie, and they're very, very focused. Their team is winning and they want to see that next play, or maybe their team is losing and they're so focused on what could their team do to improve, to make that next play. It's like they're part of the game. They're not just watching the game, but they're part of it. They're engaged. They're totally focused. And so they don't hear anything. So if their wife, their significant other, their partner, their friend, their husband says something, they truly don't hear it. It's not that they're ignoring them. It truly goes in one ear and out the other, and doesn't even register to their mental capacity, because they are singly focused. Now, if you want to get their attention, you might be able to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, I need to talk to you about, I have something serious, I need your focused attention. Give them a time frame and get them to agree to a time when they will be focused. And then you can have their undivided attention. And then they will be hunting that thing that you want to talk to them about. They'll be singly focused on that, generally speaking. Whereas the gatherer that's gathering information and taking in things from all over, they're not so much focused on completing one task. They may be able to certainly complete tasks along the way, but they're not focused on a single task. So they're taking in information. So if someone talks to them and tries to get their attention, they're right on it. They're gathering, gathering. But the problem with gatherers is it's harder for them to focus on one task if it's something that requires a lot of concentration. They don't have the same ability or the same focus to focus in on that one thing, because they're gathering information. And so for a gatherer, it's also important to set aside a time where they can be focused. If you want the gatherer to focus on a task or to have a serious conversation,